Hey everyone, it's Dion here with Racers360. Today we're going to be breaking down Heartland Motorsports Park, a really fun track. It's got a quick first section and a quick middle section, a little bit slower on the back end. Trail braking is extremely important here. Working on entry speed and slow hands on initial turn-ins are vital things to a fast lap around this racetrack. So let's go ahead. We're going to go corner by corner, talk about everything that you need to know. So let's go ahead, go full speed through and into turn one here. So as we're approaching turn one, we're going to go up. And as we approach the brake zone to turn one, we have this first kind of small right-hander here. Our turning point is going to be roughly the end of this white painted line separating pit lane and the racetrack here. Roughly about there, we're going to start turning it in. Some cars, this is going to be a little bit more of a preference. A little bit higher horsepower cars may want to turn in slightly earlier and actually apex curb that's going to be right about here. In a little bit lower horsepower, higher grip cars, that becomes a little bit less necessary as we approach this brake zone. So for the majority of drivers here, you can see being a little bit wider is totally fine. Then the big thing is getting wide out over here, using all of the track as we approach this downhill brake zone into turn one, so we can maximize our radius and flow as much speed as possible into turn one, because it is actually more of an entry speed corner than anything else. So remember, it's going to be a little bit downhill on turning point. We really want to flow the speed in here, start to lighten off the brakes. It's going to be a hard initial brake and then start to lighten, a little bit of coast. I love that the driver's using the apex curb here. Notice how we're not necessarily apexing the start of the curb. It's going to be a little bit more mid-curb where we're apexing. This is where we want to start to feed in the throttle as well. And notice how we're going to hold it right just a little bit on the exit of turn one. See how we're holding it right here so that we can set up for the radius through turn two, so we can maximize our speed through turn two to get that run all the way down to turn three here. So holding it right, we're turning back to the left roughly where this grass patch here on the right starts. Perfect turn-in, apexing just past the start of this apex curve. Use the apex curve right about here, a little dip, come back up, and we want to flow as much speed as we can through turn two as well. Use all of the road so we maximize our run into turn three. So turn three is a very long duration corner. As we're approaching it, we do have a flag stand here to be aware of on the inside. It can be important because we can't see the exit or even 3/4 through the corner. So being alert, knowing if there's an incident here, that'll be a big potential savior for you in the race or during your track day weekend. So what we want to execute here in turn three is we really want to try to bring in as much entry speed as we can so that we can really delay our initial throttle application to come quite far around the corner. We're going to typically have understeer through here. So if we can bring in more entry speed, delay that initial throttle application to come later, we're going to work the weight transfer of the car in a much better way. We often see drivers braking pretty hard on initially and getting back to throttle right about that first half or first quarter of the corner, which is way too early. So what we want to do here is work on driving it hard in. I like to drive this a little bit, I'm not trying to apex here, but point the car a little bit more diagonally towards the inside of the corner. So start to kind of position the car, if we can get this painter to work, position the car more in this direction and treat this somewhat more like a double apex. So we're going to be positioned more to the inside, driving it harder. Right about now is where I want to be wider, about a half car width or so wider, get the car to rotate back in, and then as we're starting to come towards the second apex, which is going to be closer to where this apex curve here starts, so that's going to allow you to bring a lot more entry speed in, which will push you a little bit wider. That's when we get the rotation to happen. We apply the throttle as we're coming back towards the second apex. What that is going to allow is you're going to have slightly less steering input in the car. Our driver here has a lot of steering input because they apexed and got the throttle a little bit too early. So if we can drive it in harder, a little bit more entry speed, delay that initial throttle application, we'll have a car angle that's going to be looking slightly more down the road so we can start to unwind the steering wheel. This is our second apex, the start of that apex curve here. applying the throttle, let the car be free, use all of the road out of turn 3. There's a good amount of time to get back to the left side of the road before the turn 4 brake zone here. So we want to let the car be free, and exiting turn 3, it's really important to have our eyes up. We need to be looking for that exit curb already. If you're still looking for that apex curb, your eyes are too low. So look for it, start to open the hands, let the car be free, 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 free. Then we'll have to hustle the car back to the left for the brake zone for turn 4. We have time. So hustling it back to the left, it's going to be a light, long brake zone to turn 4. We want to brake hard, then release, 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 release. Bam, right about here. So you can see it's close to the end of the apex curve. Where the apex curve really sticks out its farthest is where our apex will actually happen. So roughly in this area here is where we want to apex. No earlier than that. And again, we don't want to touch the throttle before then. We want to be trail braking. A little bit of coast is even okay. And then right about as we approach that apex here, that's where we want to get back to significant throttle, use all of the road, and then almost immediately as we get our hands straight, we're braking into turn 5. Once again, turn 5, we'll have a hard initial brake, but we want to start lightening off that heavy brake pressure early so we can extend our brake zone without over-slowing. So as we brake into turn 5, we're starting to release, release, and our driver here apexes slightly too early. I'd like to see them apex about a car length or so later. You can see where the white paint kind of extends off this curve, right about there. That's where I'd rather see them apex. That way they can start to unwind the steering wheel a little bit early. This early apex helps or creates more understeer. They're also a little bit early to throttle, which makes that understeer worse. Worse, 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 worse. And you can see, as they get out to this X curve, how much steering input they still have in the car. They weren't able to unwind the steering wheel because of that early apex. So we'd like to see a slightly slower turn in initially. Wait, now apex. This is where our initial throttle comes. Unwind the steering wheel, get out to the exit curve, and then get back to the right side of the road so we can set up for turn 6. Our next flag stand is here in turn 6 on the outside. So we want to identify that early out of turn 5 so we can pick something up and then get our eyes back towards the apex on the left-hand side. Turn 6, a little bit later of an apex as well. We're braking, start to lighten off the brakes, turning about mid-curve here on our right. We want to apex about mid to the back end of this apex curve once again, making sure we're not apexing too early. So we can see if you're apexing the start of this apex curve too early, we really want to be more middle of the curve to the back end of it so we can start to unwind the steering wheel early so we get that run out of 6 through 7 towards the 9-10 area. So bam, starting to get to throttle right into here. Open the hands, let the car be free. Now we're setting up for turn 7. Really fast left sweeper. Some of the lower horsepower cars, you can be flat through here. Most cars, a little bit more horsepower, a little bit less grip. It's going to be a bit of a lift here. We're going to be turning in before the start of this curve here on our left-hand side. There's no great markers. We want a nice slow turn in to bring the speed. Apexing about a car length past the start of this apex curve. Hold it for a little bit. Let the car drift out. Use all of the road on exit. That was really, really solid job. So as we're approaching turn 8 here, it's going to be a decently hard brake zone into this 8-9 section. So we're coming in. Full throttle, we want our eyes up, looking far forward through this section. You can see there's cones here on our right-hand side to kind of signal a brake marker. To be a wide range of brake zones depending on your car. So that we're just going to identify those. Oopsies, we went a little bit too far back. Let's get back to where we were. So as we're approaching the brake zone here, identify that 3-board, probably a decent place to get to. We'll be braking a little bit earlier than that to start off with. Hopefully getting into this 2.5 range depending on your car. We want to start releasing the brakes already. Release, release, release. Get into throttle roughly in this area here. But turn 8 is, again, a little bit more of an entry speed corner. The most important part of turn 8 is trying to get back to full throttle nearly around this area here and be flat through 9 so we get that run all the way down to turn 10. So, big area here, roll the speed, getting back to significant throttle here, holding it, and then let the car be free. We want to get our eyes up, looking forward. Right about now, let the car drift out wide, be free, very nice. That way you're not scrubbing as much speed on the run down to turn 10. We're going to go uphill, and then the road's going to crest a little bit. You can see the brake markers up here at the top of the fence. So we want to identify these early. We're picking those up with our peripheral vision because we really need our eyesight down looking towards the apex already. So we're coming in, we're picking up those brake markers with our peripheral vision. We're braking. Our next flag stand is here on the entry of turn 10. So we can see here, so pick that up. And again, turn 10, entry speed corner. We want to delay where we're picking up initial throttle because we don't want to induce too much understeer. We can roll more speed through and delay that initial throttle. We'll be faster through here. So lighten, 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 lighten. You can see we're going to apex about mid-curve or so. And ideally, we're only picking up throttle right about here. Getting back to significant throttle, we can use all of the road. We're going to gain more time by rolling more speed through turn 10 and using more road. Even if we only get back to mid-road, then we will if we sacrifice turn 10 to hold it left to set up for turn 11. So really bring the speed through turn 10. Use all the road. Yes, we want to try and hustle it back as far to the left as we can for 11, but it's more important to maximize our entry and mid-corner speed through turn 10. So into turn 11, pretty early turn-in point into 11. We're going to be apexing right again, mid-curve, at the farthest out part of the curve. That's where our apex point's going to be. Use the road again. We don't really need to set up for turn 12. You're going to gain, again, more time with the entry speed, light, brake, getting back to throttle. You get most cars be able to use about 3/4 of the road. I really like where our driver is right now. They haven't used all of the road out there to their left. Notice how there's about a half car width. Most important thing here is going to be getting it back pretty close to the far end of the track. If you're about a half car width or within a half car width of being all the way left, you're in a pretty solid position. Most cars will be able to use the majority of the track out to the right, getting back to throttle and still make it back to the left, but you're going to have to hustle it here. So you're going to hustle it back to the left side of the road to set up for 13, 14. So into 13, again, to be a light, long trail break. We want to sacrifice through here to really set up for 14, the final corner onto the front straightaway. That's the most important thing in this section here. So we want to be trail braking, and what that's going to allow you to do is have more front grip. So you'll have an easier time keeping it right at a higher speed. If you were to try to bring in, let's call it 70 miles an hour on throttle, the car might understeer and take you to the left. But if you do the same thing and with 70 miles an hour but trail braking in, you'll have more front grip. You'll be able to roll that speed, hold it right, so we can open up our radius through turn 14. So we're going to be apexing right about mid-curve here. We don't need a super late apex into 13 at all. We can really roll it in there. So rolling in, trail braking, get a squirt of full throttle in here, and then early turn into 14, coming roughly at the end of this curve here on our right. Trailing, we really want to be disciplined to not pick up the throttle in 14 until we can start to unwind our steering wheel. It's hard to roll enough speed into 13 and into 14 to not feel like you're overslowing. But even if you feel like you're too slow in entry of 14, you're going to gain more time by getting back to full throttle as early as possible. So you're going to be able to get back to full throttle early as possible by delaying that initial throttle application to come only as you're unwinding the steering wheel. And even if you're in a really low horsepower car like a Spec Miata that can get back to full throttle and continue to turn, you're still going to be scrubbing more speed with that early throttle because you're inducing that understeer. So we want to really have a light brake, a little bit of coast. We want to wait, and then here, this is where we want to get back to significant throttle. Let the car be free. Use as much road as you can. If cones are there, run right out to the cones. If they're not, you can use a little bit, get a half car width over the white line. So we're maximizing that run onto the front straightaway. So that's been the Racers 360 track guide to Heartland Motorsports Park. We hope you found a lot of value in this. Best of luck in your race weekends or track days. And we hope we'll see you at Racers360.com. We have a ton of free coaching material for drivers of all levels. We also have an amazing service where you can get personally coached by the very best coaches in the business. This is for drivers of all levels. Whether or not you've just done your first track day or you've been racing for decades, we can work with you. And what we do is we have you send in your onboard video from any camera system, or if you prefer data, you can also send in data from any data logger system. And our pro coaches will go through your video data and film a personalized coaching session. They'll add written notes, add goals, just like what you've seen here. And we'll give you actionable coaching to find time on the racetrack. We've seen drivers after one session gain a second, 2, even 4 seconds in lap time on their home track, and they're breaking their personal bests, breaking track records through the power of pro coaching. You'll be working with drivers like Memo Gidley, Mike Skeen, Jay Buford, and more. We hope we'll see you at Racers360.com and at tracks near you soon.